James Garbett in the house, and we have Denny Duma, his business partner in real estate, in the house, and I think business partner on a couple of other ventures, at least with a house purchase and renovation project. I'll let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves. You're with Keller Williams. I'll just preface it by saying that, but tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the business, and then maybe how you two came to join forces.
How about I start,
starting
Denny?
with James? Starting with James.
Yeah. I used to be Denny's realtor before he started this business. There was a time. I guess I'm 13 years into this business now. Longest thing I've ever done. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. I was solo for the beginning. I started on my own. I had a real good start. I started at the age of 24, so it was nice to start young. Recognized, wanting to have a family and also wanting to grow a business, and recognizing Denny's talent at a certain time. Partnered with Denny in 2014. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
And then since Denny and I've become partners, we've grown a team. And now our team is Denny, I, 4 realtors. We have Rachel, our operations manager, a new hire, Lauren Taylor, who's basically our marketing manager. And we also have like a videographer that runs around with us that's on a full-time basis almost. And we do a lot of things. We podcast, blog, copywriters, SEO, we've kind of changed a lot over the years. Outside of real estate, I have 3 boys, 8 years, 7 years, and 3 years old, 2 dogs and a cat. And we live in New Westminster, Queens Park, New West, with the intent to build a house in Deep Cove in the next year and get out to Deep Cove, North Van. So that's the big, fun, exciting future. And
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Oh, I also have a brewery. There you go, too. Steel and Oak.
Do you have something on the island also?
Yeah, Herald Street Brewworks too. I'm one of many. One of a few. Yeah.
Sure. How about you, Denny?
My story is a little more simple. Jamie has a very complicated life with 3 kids and 3 pets now. I've been in real estate 7 years now. Jamie helped me buy my first condo when I was 21 years old. Always knew I wanted to work for myself, just didn't know what capacity, what industry. And I always kind of had an interest in real estate. And so I'm sure at the time he was annoyed, but over time he was probably less annoyed because it worked out to be a partnership that has done some big things. But I asked him a ton of questions. I reached out to him a couple years later when I was ready to make the jump from what I was doing. And born was this partnership. I feel pretty fortunate that we kind of ran into each other. I'd like to think it was a mutually beneficial meeting and partnership that many years ago. But I've learned a ridiculous amount in a pretty short period of time in this industry, due in part a lot to James and his past experience. And yeah, we've built a team that now is 8 plus a videographer. Outside of real estate, my life is pretty simple. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have pets. So real estate takes up the majority of my life. But outside of that, it's golf and craft beer.
Golf, craft beer, and real estate is your life, your kids, your pets. It's all wrapped into one for now.
Exactly.
Yeah, next level of mastery is getting married and then your first child. That'll change things a little bit, I think.
Totally.
For everyone in the room, this session today is all about leads. How does this team sell or produce at the level that they do consistently year after year? What kind of lead generation activities are they involved in? What do they deem to be the most important or the most essential? Before we go deep into the weeds on leads, I'd like to just get a sense of the structure of how this partnership came to be cemented. James alluded that Denny was his client, and then Denny just peppered him with questions for a couple of years and then said, hey, I'm getting my license. And I'm imagining you probably said, I'm joining your team, as opposed to, can I join your team? I get the feeling your personality would be as such. Yeah. So I'm just curious, because you guys have been partners for a few years now. Was there a moment in your time, James, when you looked at Denny and said, okay, this is actually my partner. He's not a team member. We're going to move him to another status and actually join forces. What did that look like?
Yeah, I think, there was a moment. I think at a certain point, I don't know, I lose track of time, but let's say past the 2 or 3 year mark or whenever that was, where there's a big difference between a junior or minor partner versus equal partnership. And there's certain things that when it's accountability and responsibility and attitude towards the business and long-term, equal partners create a dynamic you can't replace when there's one above another. And recognizing what I wanted, what Denny wanted, what we both like doing, there's a lot of synergy there, and recognizing that seemed like the right path and taking the leap to get into it. I have no regrets, no, like I wouldn't change a thing. I think just recognizing how businesses evolve, just how you get to that equal partnership, if equal partnership feels right, can be very creative and different. But recognizing if equal partnership is something that you want to do, that's a way that you can kind of leverage and level up in a way that you wouldn't if you're always the top.
Yeah. Denny, for you, did it feel like you were there in terms of equal partnership prior to you guys actually consummating this? Or did you feel like, wow, what an honor. Thank you for putting me in this position. I didn't think I was ready. Where were you at when this came about?
Honestly, never really thought about that. But as you were saying it, I was thinking, I kind of got into this industry to try something different, to work for myself, to learn, and to try to make more money than I was making in my previous career. I liked the idea of the flexibility, which I learned was a myth pretty early on. But I think I had the right mindset teaming up with Jamie early on, that I just wanted to absorb. I wanted to learn as much as I could from this guy who was obviously doing a lot of things very well. And I'd say probably a couple years, maybe 2 years in, we started having the conversations of, Jamie maybe just had his second child, or maybe just had your second child. And so he was talking a little bit more about, how do I get a little bit more balance in my life? How do I spend more time with my kids? And I like to think I'm a pretty motivated individual that wants to work my butt off for a lot of years. And so the conversations just kind of naturally evolved over time. So I wouldn't say it was like a big surprise one day where Jamie's like, hey, I want to take a step back. You're a partner now. It was more like a couple of years of conversations and discussions on how things would look if we did decide to go that route.
Right. Okay.
We had the benefit of really open, transparent conversations early, and we made a lot of times compensation structures go in someone's favor, but even once it went against Denny's favor, and it was an open conversation that we had, and that's probably our biggest strength, really, is just there's no BS between it.
Yeah, no doubt. Denny, you joined the team. And in my mind, James has always done somewhere in the neighborhood. I mean, very early on in his career, as I recall, he's always certainly been in the top 1% of the Medallion Club. And therefore, he's doing anywhere between 70 to 100 plus deals annually. You joined the team. You're in the mix of all of that. So did you have time to even contemplate lead generation? Did you think about what you were going to bring to the team in terms of leads, or were you just thrown into the funnel, so to speak, and boom, here you go. You've got buyers tonight. You've got sellers tomorrow night.
A little bit of both, I'd say. Early on, I felt a little bit of obligation to at least give an effort. Like, that's obviously one thing that James does extremely well, is lead gen through mostly online sources. But when I started, I did not have any financial means whatsoever. So it was a lot of time spending. So I had the luxury of, I like to call it more warm marketing, where instead of cold calling or door knocking a neighborhood, I would just take any sale that Jamie had done in the last few months and walk around those neighborhoods and drop off letters and door knock that way. And it's a lot easier to spark conversations with people when you are saying, hey, we just sold your neighbor's house, because they're curious about what it went for, versus, hey, you've never heard of me. I've had my real estate license for 6 months. Sell your home with me.
Right. Of course. You've got a little bit of cloak walking or knocking on that door.
Totally.
Yeah.
When I was on my own, Josh, I think I may have but prior to Denny, I think my best year was like a little over 70 or so. I found like me on my own, 60 was kind of my comfort zone. And sometimes it would dip up just a little bit over 70. But when Denny and I first started, it was 75 deals in right away. And then we jumped up to over 100 in year 2. And it just kind of, yeah, I mean, this year's going another level too. So, but yeah, it's very different. What I used to do compared, like 60 deals on my own was a ton of work. Like it was so much work compared to like now. I mean, not just with the team dynamic, but also just technology. Everything's so much easier, DocuSign. It was a different world back then.
Well, let's go there, right? So you joined the team, Denny. At this point, James, you're doing about 60, 70 deals on your own. Your lead generation systems then were working great, clearly, for an individual agent. Yeah, minus maybe, yeah, probably had a little bit of leverage, but if you're working that kind of business by yourself, you're working. So you've got these lead generation methods there that are working really well. Did you carry those on? Have you transitioned out of what you used to do and now we're doing something different? And Denny, did you just say, hey, look, let's just keep doing what he's doing, or I've got some thoughts. I'd like to try something. So James, you go ahead and start, and then Denny, follow up.
If you did the social media marketing of the average realtor today, you would have been a superstar 10 years ago. Like it was a different world. So in short, I did similar things that we do today, but at a prehistoric way, much worse, and it was more effective. Like I worked, I recall in 2009 messaging people on Facebook, like, and they were receiving it like it was a text message from a close friend, like it was, everything was looked at. So I would put buying opportunities in front of people. But essentially I found, I decided I wanted to own the website we operate on, and I wanted to build content that would improve our online presence over a period of time and long-term rewards. I basically didn't want to cold call for the next lead all the time. I wanted to, have a presence online and be searchable. And I found really early in doing video that it worked. And then really early in climbing to like the front page of New Westminster Realtor searches on Google, I got rewards of that in year 3 of the business-ish, call it. And I wasn't doing much to get there, but I was the only one doing it in the area. And now what we're doing today is just a much more filled out version of that in a more competitive space. And I guess what I'm referring to is at the start, it was a video on Facebook, and that video would live in a blog post on my website. And I do videos about the neighborhood or something related to real estate. And the hope was that I'd have New Westminster content for people searching for New Westminster, and I'd have videos and no one else was doing them at the time in New West. So it stood out and it worked. And that was kind of the start of realizing, oh, this is better than cold calling. This is better than door knocking. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Denny.
I mean, my personality does not suit the traditional methods of prospecting. It was never fun for me. It was something I always did because I wanted to be busy. I wanted to make more money, but it is always something that in the back of my head, I thought, I can't wait till I never have to do this again. And what Jamie did, seriously, what Jamie does or did really well was set up a pretty good website and spent a lot of time, energy, and dollars on creating content for the website and SEO. And really that is our big strength today. And like Jamie said, we've spent a lot more money on it recently. We've built a new website a year and a half ago, and we are just doubling down on the things that are working. And so maybe as of 2 years ago, we were well, a handful of years ago, we were #1 in New West. So if you're Googling New West realtor, realtor in New West, top realtor New West, any of those variations, our website would show up first. And that it was a big portion of where leads came from. And moving forward, we're now just duplicating that into other markets. So I think in Port Moody, we might be on the first page now. In Burnaby, we're hovering around the first page or top of second page. And we're just targeting other areas that I don't think a lot of agents are spending a lot of time and energy in that section of being on the first page of Google.
Denny, that's an interesting point. If I can just add, so James, back when you started video, I mean, you said it perfectly. There was not a lot of competition. So there was a lot of room in that space, in that territory. In fact, the only person that I recall doing video other than yourself was Ian Watt. And I think Ian Watt was, I mean, he did it in such a way that he garnered a lot of attention. Now, there's a lot of people in here today that won't know who he is, but those that do, you can't not remember that guy.
Oh, absolutely.
So you move back to now. Now nowadays, you say it's very competitive. And Denny, I like what you just said. So you're expanding into the Greater Vancouver area, or at least the regions, the cities you spend time in, and you're noticing there's cities now. You're breaking it down from a bigger space to like, okay, this city really doesn't have a lot of competition. We're going to duplicate what we did well in New West and now make it work over here. Is there more effort being placed in other cities that you're doing this type of lead generation in versus what it was like in New West?
There's so much to this online video world. Like I mean, at some point we can go through the funnel of what we're doing today, but it's going to be overwhelming in a way because there's a simple version and then there's the R version of it, and there's steps to it. So I guess kind of like Denny and I have a podcast. We have a lot of listings and sales, and we have Kylie, a full-time videographer, taking video content from us. And all those videos live in YouTube and live in our website. And a lot of those videos are married up with written content in our website and different applications. And the details of those written content are instructed by best practices for SEO, loosely. And so if we're searching for New Westminster, that's one example, but it could be searching for name the building of your market, name the address of your market, name anything that shows up. We're basically just heavy loading all that information into their own channels that they make sense on, but also largely having them in the website too, just for long-term content.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's, but we podcast today with the intent to take video clips from the podcast for social media. And those are social media design clips, but the long version of the podcast is meant for YouTube. And then the podcast topics we choose are for what we think is best on a podcast platform, with the occasional realization that we need something to put on our email campaign for our past clients. We need some sort of content that would make good long-term content that's useful for a couple of years, evergreen. And when you can do a podcast, like this morning, Denny and I did a podcast session and we did 3 different topics. That's 3 different full version videos and probably a dozen little clips you could get from it. And out of those I don't know if we had an evergreen content topic this morning, but if we did, our podcast producer will look at the video. She will type up, she will write up a description for the podcast app and for our blog. And she's getting feedback from a digital agency company that we've hired on writing practices. So that, and all this is to just know that if tomorrow we turned everything off, I think this beast would still coast for another 10 years and maybe even 5 million in commission opportunities over that span. And so that's kind of the motivator here on trying to dial in the art, so to speak now.
Okay, amazing. You podcast, Denny, you do something, well, I'm going to say this perhaps from an observer. You do something that looks a little different. You're doing videos sometimes in your car, sometimes out in front of a listing where you're actually talking. You're sharing what appears to be your either experience, your knowledge, or your opinion about various aspects. And some of them are pretty controversial. And I love the conversations that get generated around them. So that to me appears to be separate than a podcast. So what's the intent behind that? Where did that get born? Why are we doing that?
That kind of got born because I see a few entrepreneur type people in the States doing a lot of it. And I don't know anyone in BC real estate that is doing anything like it. And so I wanted to be the first. And really, so it kind of started from one of the guys on my team, Lucas. He made a comment to me 2 years ago, maybe. And he said, like, so my role on the team now is kind of like sales manager, sales leader. So whenever there's contract issues or difficult conversations to have with clients, I kind of step in or will answer questions. And so after one of those phone calls with some sort of contract issue, he made the comment that he said, I wish I could just pull all of the knowledge out of your head and put it into my head. And so for me, that was just like a little switch flick in thinking I should share more. And so these little videos is just kind of like the next step. First, it was podcasting, just like talking about all our experiences, what we do well, what we've learned along the way. And then next, it was these little video clips that are maybe more like we try to mix in some broader topics that can be used for years to come, but also like in the heat of the moment, dealing with a multiple offer situation last night, how this communication was handled, for example, or whatever that may be. And I don't really have a problem in terms of being controversial in our industry. I think I've seen so many transactions handled well, but a lot more mishandled in my 7 years. And it's very frustrating on the buy side. Sometimes it is very frustrating understanding that a listing or a seller is leaving a lot of money on the table because people in our industry don't understand exactly the steps of communication to take to get a better outcome. And so I just want to share that. I want to be someone who is an open book, who will provide advice for people that maybe didn't have the luxury like I did early in my career of having a James Garbett answering my phone call 24/7.
Yeah, to me, it serves two purposes. Number one, it's an incredible marketing piece and allows the public to know who the heck Denny Dumas is and what kind of knowledge this person possesses. Also, it shows your passion for the industry, but it's equally a great tool for realtors that are in the business who watch those videos and get your perspective on something and perhaps even insight that helps change their business practice. So like, it's brilliant. I quite like them.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I guess just to touch on it, I mean, it's really to build an audience is what he's doing, and an authority, like he said, and that's, I think you have to decide if you want to be that on any platform, or what version of it you want to be, and don't fool yourself if you're not that person. Don't pretend to be, but sometimes you have to try to know, and I know that Denny gets energy from it, and it's a positive for our team, for sure. We wouldn't have a full-time videographer if it wasn't for Denny's passion for this. So
indeed. So just out of curiosity, Denny, you're rocking it. James, have you ever thought, man, I should be doing what Denny's doing?
No, we both have opposite video conversations. Whenever we have ideas, they just go the opposite way. But not, I mean, ultimately, I get a little bit exhausted by Instagram. So I'm not at the state of my life where I can deal with the communication that comes with really being good and engaging on it. So I just do it for the dose that I can give in the moment that I can give it. But maybe one day I will step it up. Right now, I'm more into content that we have a longer term benefit on. And Denny's more into content that grows a following. And those are two very different things. So I guess that's a positive in a way.
Well, definitely a positive in a way, because you've got your lane, and Denny, you've got yours. You guys come together when it's time for podcasts. Certainly come together when it comes time for deals. But in my mind, it's the ultimate doubling down when it comes to lead generation. Quite literally. So let's go backwards if we can, because what I'm sensing right now is we've got this really high level view of where you exist today and where it sounds like you could go in the future, where you might be going in the future. But let's say, for the sake of everyone in the room who would like to emulate on some level what you're doing and needs a place to begin, where would either of you believe would be a good starting point for that?
Go ahead.
You go first, Denny.
I just want to see you two compete for the answer. That's all.
I think you're going to get two different answers here. I think
Yes.
like it depends, I guess, where you are in your career and how much you have to spend. So what we do yearly with our website is very expensive if you are new in this business. It is a huge portion of our lead gen, our website, and all the stuff we do with online marketing companies every year. But starting from scratch, if I was to start over again, I would do video consistently from the beginning of my career. And I think a lot of people have this idea in their head that they need to be perfect and they need to be super knowledgeable. But I think sharing the adventure of real estate, sharing the ups and downs, sharing the learning experiences early in your career could be really beneficial in terms of building a following online and on your social media. And I wish I would have done that a little bit more. I was kind of a shy kid growing up, and it took me a few years in this industry to kind of come out of my shell. But if I could go back, I would have pushed myself a little bit earlier in my career to just put myself out there a little bit more.
Denny, where would you put those videos? So like there's, see, great, I've got my phone, I've got my, so let's say I've got a gimbal, maybe I don't, but I'm going to do my videos. Where would you put them?
Yeah, I always say my Instagram profile is my online 24/7 resume. So I would start there. That's a platform that I feel really comfortable in. And it doesn't have to be the same platform for you. If you work better on YouTube and longer form videos, if you work better, I mean, podcasting is something that I have really grown to love. That is more just conversational. And that's where I feel like I'm best. I'm not really the scripted professional, highly produced type person. So I love that podcast platform, but for me, it's Instagram. It is free. That's one of the best things about it. A gimbal costs whatever, 150 bucks. And then there's free editing apps out there that you can play around with to make them look a little bit more professional if you would like them to. But that's, yeah, Instagram is my number one platform that I use.
Beautiful. Thanks. How about you, James?
I guess I get the benefit of feeding off Denny here. So a few things come to mind, and Denny's had these conversations too. Like a big thing I always ask when you're new in the business and you just see opportunity, and you just want to get out there and do stuff, you really don't often take a step back and think long term and dream. And so I often try to get people just to really kind of figure out who they are. What do they like when they see themselves 10 years from now? What do they want to be known for? Where do they want to be living? And what do they want to be known for selling? And how many deals is that? You know, if your goal is 20 deals a year, 30 deals a year, you don't have to do any of this stuff. You know, you can have a real simple business and stick to a few things. But we're going volume. So, you know, Denny and I are hoping to achieve 200 sales this year. So, and we want long-term market share and dominance in our market. So that's what we're going after. But I mean, an example would be like, where do you want to live and what kind of product do you want to be selling? And then how many deals of that? And if you have an ambitious goal of 40 plus deals and you want to grow and you want to sell more, then the assumption there is that you want leads to come in without effort as well. and then you have to choose your platform that you truly believe and you're true to yourself that you are going to stick to. And you don't have to pick them all. And even though Instagram is probably a standout right now for certain segments, you could be successful without it as well. But right now we're in a visual world, so Instagram makes sense. Facebook historically made sense and they work together. So if you're going to do one, you might as well do both. You don't need to do anything else if you don't want to. But I often find that if you have ambitious goals, you want to have your own website. And if you want to have your own website, you want to embed videos in your website, you want to build long-term strength there, then you're going to have a YouTube channel that embeds videos on the website. And then the website's going to, well, I guess the magic needs to work there. But before I go on my tangent here, where do you start? What do you do? If I were to reinvent myself as a North Vancouver luxury home realtor, and I was just doing that moving forward, I'd probably start by sharing my interest and passion for North Vancouver houses. So I would be going to my favorite neighborhoods and talking about them. I would be talking about my favorite architecture and styles of homes in certain areas. I would be just sharing my interest with the world of what I want to be selling. I would want to have content catered towards exactly what I want to be selling. I would be starting to tell that story early so that I'm drawing people to what I want to sell so I can start selling that sooner than later. And that could mean a geographic area. It could mean a certain type of product. It could be prepared market statistics. It could be detailed information about the community plan, or it could be an impulsive walk the street and just share about what you love in the moment. But that's the content that I would be pushing out there.
Both of you are saying the exact same thing. Video for sure, by the sounds of it, and put, however it is you're going to push it out, start early and do it often. Can I ask this question then? Is it as simple as that? Like, if someone watches your video, do you truly expect that leads will come in from that? Or should there be more attached to it?
No.
Okay.
I think I mentioned this actually to Denny this morning. I think it was Ian Watt that had a good advice that I observed early on, and it was about getting started in video. And he made someone stand up and do a video and then post it. And then he's like, you're not allowed to delete it. Now your motivation is to make so many good videos to bury that bad video under. And yeah, having that kind of rule where you have stories now to get started because they disappear, but eventually you got to take the leap into forcing yourself to post something. And the moment that happens, the motivation there is to bury that post under better videos, because that first post is the commitment.
Got it. Now I know this is, sorry, Denny, you might want to throw a thought on that as well too.
I think it's just the
Okay.
consistency, assuming that, like doing 4 videos and posting them and then just quitting, just assuming that those 4 videos are going to lead gen, I think is pretty naive. But the consistency, one, it improves because you just keep getting better and better and more confident. And you understand as time goes on, like what is important to share that could potentially catch people. Like I was telling Jamie this morning, I did a couple of videos on Brentwood, maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, just talking about new construction, what pre-sale options are out there, how the neighborhood is changing, what the mall is going to look like. And from that, someone just found it on YouTube, and I asked him how he found it, and he just typed in new construction Brentwood on YouTube, and our video came up, and he called us and bought a condo 30 days later. So yeah, okay. Like the consistency, but I had probably done that video 2 or 3 months before he had even found it. But I think just the long-term consistency is crazy. It is, in the last few months, maybe I've looked back at the last 3 years, and it is pretty cool to see how much improvement you make, first of all, but also just the amount of stuff that we've done. And so I was saying, in the last 3 years, I've done like probably over 250 podcasts, over 150 property videos, and probably another 150 videos that are just like those little clip videos or talking about something specific. And it's pretty intimidating, I think, for a lot of younger people in the industry or people that are maybe just thinking about getting into video to watch someone online like Ryan Serhant, who is just has a big production team and his stuff looks very good. And it's intimidating to say, well, my first video sucks or is not going to look good. But when you look back over 2 years and you see this crazy progression and whatever that is, 600 pieces of content that came out of that, it's kind of cool. And I don't know, it's cool to kind of look back at the growth, I think.
What I love though is no matter what, it just has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if we can get past the fact that it's not going to be high level production right out of the gate, there's probably still room in New Westminster for someone to come in, or in some of the areas you're looking at, to begin the process of video and reap some benefit or reward somewhere down the line, without the thought in mind, I'm going head to head with you both. They're just going to go and just show up in their own unique way. Yeah.
I think
So
video moving forward, it's the numbers. Like, it's not one impactful video. There's just too much video going on. I think it's kind of finding what's the right video for you, because we're doing volume, but you don't have to do volume. Like on the light end, I think it's important to have a real good video that sells you professionally and is about you. And maybe there's a lighter one that's a little bit about you outside of real estate. And ideally some videos that show how well you market properties. And if someone looks up your name and they land on a site that has a nice video about you and some nice videos about some properties you've sold, that's the starting point. Just having that base online resume is the starting point. And then doubling down on something.
okay, now here's a thought that goes through my mind. I remember at one point James, you followed, gosh, if I can remember the gentleman's name, he's still a realtor, but he was very popular in Burnaby. He worked with Sutton. He was out of your office and he did a ton of business.
Yeah, Jeff Jarman, I think, because it's
that's the one. Yes. And he did a lot of flyers, neighborhood flyers. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you followed that model. And I believe you were doing that model, well, up to a certain point, not long ago, let's say it that way. Are you still doing flyers?
Poorly. Yes. He's still doing a lot of them. So they do work. And arguably they bring in listings that you wouldn't normally get. It's a lot of money for a little reward, but if you truly believe in your ability to work opportunities off of one opportunity, it could be a long-term payoff. But I tend to look at flyer print marketing as a 2-to-1 reward. So if you spend 50 grand on it, you might get $100,000 in commission back. But that's over like a short term. If they refer you or reuse you down the road, that number could get better over time. But I don't really like print marketing. I do justify in certain markets though, where we know that yes, we might get 2 phone calls from this $3,000 drop, but 400 people that know us live in that area, they're going to see it. So it's another touch point with people that know us and people that have done business with us. And that helps, but we've dialed it back from doing it 9-10 times a year to probably 4 times a year, maybe. So yeah, we're probably, this year is probably the least print year in the last, I don't know, in a long time. So it's trending downwards.
Got it. What would you say, Denny, right now on the team are your top 3 lead sources, starting from 1, 2, 3?
1 is probably past clients and referrals. 2 is probably our website, just internet leads. 3 would be social media.
Social media. Okay. Yeah. And that is going to get you, both your team, to the 220 deals. You're hoping will get you to the 220 deals for this year?
Yeah.
Close. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, amazing for starters. And I love what your answer, Denny, past clients and referrals. I mean, it really does. You have to start with a core of something, and your past client referral, if you've done something right with them along that path, will be your best source of income, period. Yeah. And James, to your point, you know, if the beast were to stop running today, it could go on for a decade or so just based on that. The numbers might dwindle a touch bit, but you'd still be able to put gas in the car and food on the table based on that. Right. Maybe not 10 years, but for sure a few years anyways. Yeah. What do you do that's unique or different for past clients to get them to come back to you, if anything, and to get the referrals?
You know, the past client thing is, it's always evolving and changing. You know, I think we went a little bit too hard in sending, like, I think when we totaled it up, it was like 22 touch points in a year. When you were a past client a couple of years ago, and we're probably going to get down to 12 or 14. But essentially, in my thought, in a dream world, once you're in the database, you're a past client, you're going to get maybe let's say 6 email newsletters a year, 3 print newsletters that aren't garbage, that have some value in it, that have some personal stories and fun. So what's that? That's 4 email, 3 print, I like the St. Patrick's Day card. We did that. That was a fun one. We do an anniversary card and maybe a Christmas card. So that's 3 cards. So that's 10 touch points. And then, Denny, I might be missing some stuff. Social media engage, we would do in normal times, a couple events as well. And I think that to me, 3 newsletters, 4 emails, 3 special occasion cards, and an event, I think is the right amount.
Yeah.
Something that we're trying to dial back because it is ridiculously time consuming is we had this thing where we wanted to deliver Christmas presents to everyone that had done a deal that year and anyone who had referred us a deal that year. It got to the point in 2019 where Jamie, how many did you drop off? 120?
Well, I mean, Josh has a worse story than mine, but
with
like with pies. But basically, like we walked in the office and my drop off, it was like 155 gifts that I had to drop off around town or something stupid, but it just covered the office. It was an incredibly daunting task when I walked in the door, and it just stressed out. It's stupid. So we went too hard with it, and that was my fault. I think when you're busy and you feel like guilty, you just batch showing appreciation to everybody. And now we're starting to dial it back.
Anybody go, so if you're dialing it back, I'm assuming that means you just didn't quite deliver presents the way you did in 2019. Did anybody go, darn it, you two, I'm not using you again. You never gave me a gift.
No.
I don't think so.
No, probably not. Yeah. Okay. But it was a very nice touch nonetheless. I
was going to mention, I like using December as a good time to show appreciation to anyone throughout the year that maybe I couldn't reward on the spot. You know, I'm guilty of getting a referral in February and not showing my reward until December. But just, you know, when times are crazy busy, that's a nice time to really like, okay, let's recap, who referred us clients this year? Who did a deal with us this year? Who did something for us special that we need to show some sort of gratitude to, that we may have slipped the cracks. So just taking that moment to step back and think about it. That's my December.
Indeed. You know, truthfully, that period, that stretch of Thanksgiving to December is the thankful months. That's where people really glow in gratefulness and thankfulness. And that's all the media is talking about. So when you're showing up in their world around that time, if they had a good experience with you, you get some exponential growth from them as a result of being in their world at that time of the year, particularly say any other time. That's our belief anyways. So can I ask you a question? So James, you've had assistants before hired, I'm sure have had to go through the process of hiring and letting go. You had one for a long run. Denny, have you had to hire assistants at this point or let them go as well too?
We're both involved in that part of the process now.
Okay.
Just by necessity. And yes, we've grown a lot in that world and have, you know, hiring is tough and you can't avoid it. If you want to grow, you might as well get good at it. And not just the hiring part, the actual managing and leading and everything that goes around it. Yeah, everything. You can't ignore it. Even if it's not your strength, it's not something that you can hide. You know, at some point you have to, if you don't want to be the one doing all the work, you have to get help and leverage off others and yeah, they have needs too, you know? So, but I'd say one thing is we have made the mistake of overhiring in the past, and it's better to be understaffed than overstaffed, in my opinion. And there are certain things that are far better to be outsourced than kept in house. So we've been grateful to kind of really like highlight that. Like we outsource our feature sheet design now, and we didn't do that before. And there's you know, and like our videographer's a subcontractor, and you know, we're not gonna just immediately staff up because our market is so volatile. Like things shift, and it's not a good feeling having a high overhead in a shifted market. And we've been there before. So yeah, I don't know. That was a bit of a tangent.
That was a great tangent. Denny, your thoughts?
Yeah, firing sucks. It just like, I like when people are happy. I feel like I'm a pretty high energy guy, and when you have to deliver disappointing news, it can be very exhausting and like it can be very anxious. I heard something on a podcast that I kind of take in with me to any of those meetings, in that I have to understand I'm making this decision for the betterment of the business. This has nothing to do with the personality of this person. Maybe they're just not the right fit for this job. And hopefully them being, let go from this position will allow them to be in a position that maybe they can thrive in and they enjoy a little bit more. But just understanding that this decision is solely from the perspective of enhancing our business. And if I did not make this decision, and if I did not have this conversation, I would be hurting the other members of our team, of our business.
Yeah. What a great frame of mind. If you have to go into a conversation like that, then you're doing something for the betterment of the organization, and as opposed to really trying to hurt somebody's feelings, which you're not, but that's inevitable, but potentially.
Yeah,
Would you?
I mean, the more you do this, the better you get at it, the better it just gets easier over time. I mean, like you said, firing isn't fun, but it truly does get easier over time, just because you don't let situations get to that point without there being acknowledgement along the way.
Gary Keller said it. He probably wasn't the one that's coined it, but he said it and I heard it. He said, hire slow, fire fast. And when you recognize right out of the gate that this isn't the right person for the role, great person, I'm sure, but wrong person for the role you need filled, let them go and just move on with life. There's something that I'm hearing guys both say that sort of ties into leads. I know that it takes time to become a good lead generator, to really see the fruits of your leads come through. There's a secret in this industry too, that once you become really good at this lead generation business, which is typically where agents gravitate to first, because they need to put food on their table, that you're going to need leverage. And the moment you need leverage, you realize I've got to hire someone. Well, there's a skill that is underdeveloped for the most part with most agents. And that's a skill set that is, in my mind, tantamount. It's equal to the lead generation. You've got to know how to find good talent, recognize it, and then train it so that they can succeed. And ideally, just go for talent if you can afford it. Would you agree?
I mean, if you're trying to grow a team, talent, and don't.
And there he is right there, Denny Dumas. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, but also don't expect you have to grow too. It's not just, I mean, it's a completely different skill set, like you said. And I think there's a very, there's two different worlds. I mean, you can be very successful as an independent, one individual realtor, and sell higher, homes and really crush it with one support or one helper. And I think that is a great formula. If you wanted to keep life simple, you become the staple focused realtor that deals with the opportunities, and eventually get more selective with the opportunities you choose, have one helpful person assistant to help you, and have one realtor that you can outlet to, whether they're under you or just an independent realtor. I think that is a great way you can make a lot of money and have a phenomenal career that way. And then the other version of that is grow a team like us. But I feel like those would be, if I were trying to be a luxury North Shore realtor, it's hard to leverage off people in a team environment that way. There's a reason why those individual agents stand out over there. Just, so if I want to be a luxury realtor, it would be hard for me to think that I could just have anyone show up at the showings and leverage off them. But that's kind of why the product that Denny and our company sells is perfectly designed for a team. It's blue collar, and it's more entry-level houses and townhouses and condos, and people don't expect one superstar agent at the top to show up.
They might actually expect that you won't be there all the time, that there will be people assisting you. Yeah. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, but team is you're being a manager and being a realtor are two very different things.
Well said. That's very true. Very true. And you're transitioned into that role now, Denny. So how's it been for you coming in as an agent, and then now you've transitioned into, I believe you said director of operations. Well, that wasn't the word. You used a different word, but.
I like to call myself a few things, Josh, but
I go with Yoda if that's okay.
I've been called Sensei by Lucas a few times. I like that one. But yeah, just like I say, sales leader. For bringing on new agents, we're pretty selective. It's not like we get to a point in our business and say, okay, we need one more person. It's more just like always eyes open. And when the right person comes along, don't be afraid to pull the trigger. For me, it's a lot of personality and intuition. I am very aware that if people are going to be as good at this career as I think James and I have become, that there's going to be a lot of training involved, and that's up to me. So it's more, I want to find the right personalities that are going to understand that customer service is the most important thing in this role, and the other stuff I can help them with.
And
What has, yeah, go ahead, James.
just like Denny and I was Denny's realtor at one point. We kept in touch, but I think I nudged him more into real. He might have ended up there anyway, but I definitely nudged him into it. And Adam on our team as well. I slid up in his direct messages on Instagram and nudged him into real estate. And I will say, like, considering how amazing our business is and how great our like the career opportunity there is, we don't get that many people knocking at our door. Like we there's not many people showing up, and specifically within our industry, realtors within it. So I've often found like looking outside the industry has been great for us, and we wouldn't have the team we had today if that didn't happen.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? So I was going somewhere with a train of thought, then I got sidetracked, which back in the day, hiring and learning that skill. But of course, there's always that question when you're a new agent starting out, you've got this business showing up in ways that stress you and in a good way, but they stress you nonetheless. And you're like, at what point do I make the decision, pull the trigger and hire an assistant? I know, Denny, you came into the role where there were assistants in play. James, you went through the process of making those decisions early on in your career. So let's skip past that point now, because at some point every agent's going to wonder that. But what I'm wondering right now is, when did you decide I'm going to hire a videographer or production manager? Did you say production manager? I think you said that. Yeah.
We got a
Something like
podcast
that.
producer.
Oh, and a podcast producer, a producer.
That's
Yeah.
subcontracted though, but
Yeah. Did you phone Oprah up and say, can you loan me someone? How did this work?
Well, Denny and I had the know-how. We knew where this market was going last summer, and we had the hindsight we were pretty aggressive with our marketing in 2016, and that got us to another level. And so we're like, let's just throw stuff at the wall. And Denny's like, I want a videographer. I want a digital marketing agency. And I want a new website. And so we just both get what we want. And yeah, we're stumbling our way through it. But there's no better motivation to make it work than have big invoices show up in your inbox all the time. And yeah, we kind of just force ourselves to make it better and learn it.
Something tells me the monthly nut here is more than 10 grand to run this machine.
Yeah.
Okay.
What would it be? 30 to 40, something like that? 30 to 40,000, maybe right now?
40,000 they're taking. That's all in. That's assistants, that's salaries, marketing, cost of marketing, and then the people, everything.
Yeah. Office lease, all that stuff.
Yeah. Now we could dial
Office
back to 20, I think. So we could lean it up to 20, the way that we're set up. But
and still reach the goal of 220.
If we, yeah, in theory, if we wanted, we're the difference between, I'd say 20 and 30, that there's a $10,000 that's purely long-term motivated, right? Like we wouldn't have a digital agency for the short term. We wouldn't have a full-time videographer for the short term.
Right.
Yeah, we wouldn't be spending the money on the things we're spending on for the short term.
That was my point right there, is that I think the reason that we're having we're going to have a really good year this year is because of the stuff we've done in the last 5 years. It's not because of the videographer this year. Yeah. The videographer is hopefully continuing to build consistent content so that in 5 years from now, we're much better than we are today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it.
There's the momentum in this business is a real thing.
Yeah.
And when you sell more, it's easy to sell more. It's just hard to break through. And right now our year is setting the foundation for next year already, just because we have so many opportunities and stories to tell this year that momentum is going to carry to next year.
Okay. Which is really interesting because in 2016, you saw the market moving in a certain direction. Last summer, clearly there were signs that multiples were showing up, and not quite like they were January, February, March of this year, but they were on their way. And there's a certain feeling on the pulse, if you will. Is that something that you feel you've dialed in now? You've got a sense of when things are going to go up in this direction, and would you equally be able to tell when things are going in the other direction potentially? Before you answer that question, Carla, if you could you mute Manveer for me, please? Thank you. Or yeah, there we go. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of touch on it. I think that like, for me, there's a very stark difference between busy season and off season. And yeah, I mean, my attention pivots and changes. And most of what we're spending on money today doesn't need to be an off season. You have more time. You can decide what you spend your time on an off season. And off season could be spent door knocking if you want more opportunities in that moment, or it can be spent on long-term content or content that's going to have a long-term benefit. And that's usually what I kind of steer towards. So I guess just to answer that, like, we spend more money now because we have so many stories to tell now, and momentum. So the more we spend, like, that list, we get opportunities because they see a video that they liked, that was luck and momentum and timing, so but yeah, I mean, in the fall, that's when we work on what's broken in the website, what sort of long-term blogs and videos, new team professional photos, new listing presentation, buyer presentation, yeah, everything and anything. Update the database. Updating the database is big. Start a database. Like, if even if it's an Excel sheet, you got to have a sheet that has your past clients on it.
Something, it's got to exist somewhere.
Yeah.
I think
so.
Talking about the predictions and just like feeling where the market is going, I think we just are pretty fortunate enough to sell enough and see so many properties every week and so many different situations within our team. And we sell everywhere from West Vancouver out to Maple Ridge, and on the other side, Langley, Abbotsford. So we just have such a big variety of property types and communities that we're working in. I would love to say that we can predict the future, which is not true, but I feel like we have so many experiences weekly that we're feeling when markets are shifting as quickly as anyone.
Okay.
And so when things are happening, we're kind of going a little bit on intuition and past experience of, oh, I remember in 2017 when this happened and markets started to slow, let's pull back on our print marketing for the next few months and see what happens, kind of thing.
I love that. I imagine that's a real conversation. Like, your fingers on that pulse, it's just shifted, something's up. And then you look, you're doing the level of business you're doing already. So, it's not just one section of real estate. It's likely covering quite a few different sections. So
I mean, most of it's seasonality, Josh. Like, in a typical normal year, February to April, we're aggressive at spending money in marketing. And then we'll have a little surge at like that late August, September. And that's usually in any given year. Absolutely. It's whether we go past April, that's where we like, okay, it's June now. If we send out a flyer now, it's going to land in, if it lands in July, it's kind of I think it might just be a waste of money, and it might be better just to spend that money in August and save it. And that's probably the conversation we just had, so yeah, we just chose not to send our next flyer batch out.
Got it. Okay. I want to sort of shift gears a little bit and imagine there's agents that are relatively new here that are hoping to get to that first 20 deal a year mark. And then from 20, obviously 30, 40, 50, then maybe they double and go, I'd love to do 60 or 80. My recollection of going in those increments in my career is that there's different phases of burnout that you experience that you couldn't have predicted until you got there. And since you've been together for a little while, you've experienced no doubt degrees of fatigue. How do you plan for that? how do you protect your energy so that you show up as your best? And how do you guys support each other? How does a team support each other? What does that look like?
Oh, that's a tough one, Josh.
Jamie-
You know,
Jamie
James,
said
we'll
something-
go to Denny first.
Yeah, Jamie said something to me early on in my career, and he said you just have to understand and be okay with the cycles of real estate, the natural cycles throughout a year. And it took me probably 2 to 3 years to be okay with it, because I was a pretty motivated kid when I got in this business, and I just wanted things to happen all the time. And I just now understand that August, regardless of whether it's busy or not, I'm taking it easy. And December, regardless of what our business is doing, I'm taking it easy. Those are typically the two slowest months of the year for us. And so we just kind of gear towards that. And so I am totally fine working, 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week from January to July, because I know I'm going to take August pretty easy. And there's like, especially in busy years, I think it's important. And Jamie and I both like really try to get away for 3 nights once or twice throughout busy season. And we always just try to avoid going at the same time, of course. But I think
Good idea.
it's a natural little good refresh that can kind of boost your energy a little bit for that next 2 months of busy season or whatever that is.
Fascinating, Denny, isn't it? Like one night or 2 nights or even three in a row can really buy you some time
Yeah.
back in the ring, so to speak.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We've got a pretty good luxury of having, we have 4 other realtors on our team now, all who are very strong. And so at this point in our career, it's not super challenging to be able to do that versus
Right.
in 2017 when it was me and Jamie and we had our busiest year to date, like until last year, it was more of we're going to sacrifice something if we go away for these 3 days versus this year is not like that because of the quality of the people on our team now.
That's a real feeling, isn't it, Denny? Like if I take these 3 days off, man, we're paying a heavy price for this.
Yeah. And
Would
I
you
was completely
go
unwilling
ahead.
to do that. In 2016 and 17, I was just unwilling to accept it. And so I just didn't. But
You didn't go away, is what you're saying.
not until August.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
And now you think a little differently. Sorry, James. I just want to drill on that. So now, now if things were busy like that, would you still have that mindset, or would you take the 3 nights off?
I think we've built I guess we've built the structure now that we have the luxury of doing it.
Yeah.
And so we don't need to be present for every single showing, for every single listing appointment because of the quality of the people on our team.
Yeah.
And we have one newer guy this year that just started with us in February, but the other 3 have each been with us for 3 to 4 years. And so they've just seen so much and experienced so much in those 3 or 4 years that they wouldn't have got by themselves, that now they are just really, really quality realtors. They understand customer service, they understand our processes. And so for us to take a step back from a transaction is like we do it all the time now.
And like James said, the clientele that you're working with wouldn't expect you to be there 24/7. They certainly love you for it, but they're going to be quite fine if one of your team members shows up, because they're coming in with language and experience and confidence that they could not have gotten anywhere else if they were on their own.
Yeah.
The team
And I set that
environment.
expectation from the first meeting. And I say, the reason that there's 2 of us here is because we're a busy real estate team. We're in the middle of spring. This is our busiest time of year. And what we do is we set up a group chat with whoever the other realtor is, Monica, myself, and the 2 of you. And any questions that you have, go into that group chat and one of us will get back to you as soon as possible. But the fact that both of us can't be here all the time, but you're getting 2 of us for the price of 1.
Yeah. And people are human. Like they're good. They're going to be ultra forgiving and gentle with you. And yeah, Denny, go take your time off. You need it.
As long as things are not missed. So people are not
Sure.
gentle and human when things are missed or when things are replied to slowly. But when you set the expectation early and you deliver exactly what that expectation is, people are 100% on board.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Thank you. James, go ahead.
Just to add to Denny's comment there, I think as you can groom behavior with clients, as you know, based on how you respond and communicate back to messages. If they message you at 8, you can choose to reply. It's a lot easier to not reply to that 8 o'clock message if you were proactive about everything that was important that day, as opposed to, oh, I forgot to tell them this or send them this, and they message you that night because they're confused. And yeah, if you don't reply to that, then that's just sloppiness. So, I feel with experience, you get more aware of how to influence communication and behavior and timing. You get more motivated to be proactive about communication so that you don't get those stressful last minute requests. You anticipate things coming up proactively. But in terms of getting away, I don't know if there's like a hack there. It is a hurdle to overcome. It just gets easier with time, and it gets easier the busier you get and the bigger your business gets. It doesn't get easier in terms of having work when you're away, but being in like a mental state of mind to be able to get away. It's much easier for me to get away now than it was before. But I also am doing little things to kind of improve my chances of getting away. And that comes down to recognizing the possession dates and completion dates on all my contracts. I'll intentionally bulk load them on certain weeks so that I can leave other weeks late. And just little things like that can improve your quality of summer. Yeah.
I think it's important, like in this conversation, that we look at, okay, we're here about the leads. Everyone wants to know your secret sauce on your leads and what drives this machine of yours, because it's a beautiful thing to watch from the sidelines for sure. And at the same time, recognizing that there's a price to be paid for it. We're in this business of real estate where when an agent's getting their license, there's this belief that I can control my time. I get to work my own hours. Right. Well, all of them actually. And so you get into this, you've got to find a way to really protect yourself and think this through in the beginning. It's super helpful to think this through as to how I'm going to do that, whether it be a hobby, preferably something that really burns energy and exercise.
I think Denny and I would both, Denny had his run every day thing. I've done some stupid long runs. I can always say, even though I'm not in that mode right now, when I am running regularly, the mind is much more clear. Like exercise, cardio, that exertion just clears up the voice in the head. That's for sure.
Out of curiosity, did you and Mike Huber ever cross paths when you were running around the world?
Not yet.
Okay, you probably will. That day will come for sure. That's good. That's certainly super helpful in terms of having a way to, if you're not going to take the time off, but then at least a way as an outlet to help that energy pass through you, because if it bottles up, that stress can really do some damage on our health and certainly our attitudes.
Yeah. And balance swings. There's work weeks, there's work months, there's pleasure months. You just being okay with what's a work month or what's a work week, and what's, like our summers are short. So for me, it's very, very important that you make time to enjoy some of July and August. If you can't enjoy July and August, what's the point? But it's easier to enjoy July and August when you put in, a good effort in May and June, and so just recognizing our seasons, August is more likely to be slow than May. So plan for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. James, you've got some interesting ventures outside of real estate. Do you two come together and say, I'm going to collaborate on a project outside of, like, it might be real estate related, but outside of sales, like doing 220 a year? Do you ever come together and say, let's do something, let's create something together?
I think I've done too much and I'm trying to do less.
Yeah.
So I'm content in the outside venture part of my life, but I do feel like the real estate investment development ambitions are the future, and that's something that I'm sure there'll be stuff that I do on my own and stuff that I do with Denny. We did a project in the past, and I know that in the future there'll be another one at some point in time.
Sure. Okay. Got it. Either one of you ever plan on getting your managing broker's designation?
Nope.
It's not
like Denny, that's job, your role personally. Your answer is no, Josh. Isn't that why you're getting it?
It is kind of like my role on the team at the moment. And I like, without having the managing broker title, I get to speak in strictly practicality
Mhm.
versus as a managing broker, I feel like there's some responsibility there to give the by the rule book answer.
Mhm. Yes, if you ever really want to just dip your toe into that world, just join the professional conduct committee at the board, and you can see how gray actually fits into black and white in terms of that role. It's
Sure.
quite lovely. Yeah, that's way off topic. We're at the 12:12 mark right now. I'd love to open this up for questions. I'm happy to keep asking them. I think for the most part, I've satisfied myself with what I wanted to learn from both of you. And I know that there's so much more, but it has very little to do with leads, really. So that will be for another time when we get a chance to do this again. But for those of you that are in the room that have had a burning question that you haven't heard me ask and have been wanting to hear it or would like to ask it, feel free to either unmute yourself and ask the question, or just put it in the chat and I'll read it for you. Either or. I see that we've got Jeff's come in and said, thanks so much for the info. Really great. Appreciates the transparency, which I do have to thank both of you for that. You have not held back. You've not played poker with any answer to a question I've asked you. You've shared it wide open, which is just a beautiful thing. So thank you very much for doing that.
You're very welcome.
What's interesting is when I do ask for questions from the room, I should preface right at the very beginning when we do a webinar, hey, look, there's going to be a time for questions, so get them ready. There's usually this pause and silence, so it's quite enjoyable.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Nick.
So we have a team, relatively young. Everyone's doing pretty well. And one of the things that we wanted to do, this is Lynn and myself, it's the Lynn and Nick real estate team, was compensate reasonably. Right now we're sort of working on a step after a certain amount of deals. They bump up to another percentage, and then also the percentage between what Lynn and I share. So if you guys are comfortable, do you mind sort of laying out how you guys compensate and how to motivate past just what they're making per transaction?
Danny, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. I don't think there's a right answer to this. And I think each team out there, depending on what value the team leaders are bringing versus what value the team members are bringing, the compensation structures are going to look very different. So I'll say for our team, the biggest value adds that we bring, I believe, are one, we produce a lot of leads, and I would say 90% of anything that we produce goes out to team members, regardless of whether that's a listing or a buyer. Jamie, maybe jump in here, but last year we did 150-ish, 150 transactions, and I would guess about 120 of that was GD generated.
Yeah, about that.
Roughly. Okay. So our big thing is we produce a lot of leads, and that goes to providing opportunity for team members. We have adjusted our commission structure almost every year for the last 4 years. And as realtors in our system get more competent, they get more independent. We don't have to be involved in those daily conversations with sellers or involved in all the negotiations. I think they deserve a higher percentage of each lead. So this year, we have added an extra 5% per deal on their 30th deal moving forward, and an extra 10% per deal on their 40th deal and above. So I'm happy to share our exact structure if you.
Yeah, can I call one of you two and just go over it? Because I'd like to go over my numbers with you.
Mhm.
And I realize there's no such thing as perfect.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I want to be fair without being ridiculous. And unfortunately, sometimes I'm a little too giving almost, in a sense that doesn't allow for proper stability within the business model, right?
Yeah.
So I know KW has their own sort of procedure, like how they go through it. But anyways, if you don't mind, I'd love to contact Wayne just to check into that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure everyone here gets some value out of it. So just to kind of specific on it right now, like we have a difference between, say, self-sourced versus GD sourced leads. On the buy side, if it's self-sourced, we get 40, GD gets 40%. If it's GD sourced, it's 50%. On the sell side, if it's self-sourced, a realtor gets 40, GD gets 60. If it's GD sourced, GD gets 75, realtor gets 25. And that's the splits we have for buy sell. And then, like Denny said, 30 deal mark, 40 deal mark, some increases there, potentially some surprise rewards along the way if things are better than expected. And it works for the dynamic of our team, and it won't work 10 years from now or 5 years from now. So it's something we're always going to have to reassess in some way. Like Denny said, as realtors grow, well, there's two issues with the way we're doing things. One, you want to retain talent long-term, and so it would be a shame not to have the flexibility to retain them. So we have to figure that out over time. And I do feel that we do offer a lot of value for those that want to do volume and value lead generation. But if, in theory, if you didn't want to do one of those things, then it wouldn't make sense. And then I guess separately, over time, as you're with our team, the longer you're with our team, the more your leads are intertwined with ours, and the less the source of the lead matters. So just recognizing that where the lead comes from matters more when you're year one with the team than when you're year 5 with the team. Not that we have 5-year members yet, but I just know that it's going to be more about, oh, I really want Adam on this one. I really want Monica on this one. I really want Lucas on this, name the person, but I'd hate for the difference between the compensation split to be part of the decision-making factor. And that's something we'll have to look at in the future. So yeah, that's where we're at.
One thing I was going to touch on, and Keith just actually wrote it in the comments here, so I'll mention it.
Thanks, Denny. I appreciate that. You're watching. Good.
Yeah, for sure.
Go for it.
We want to encourage good behavior. We want to encourage phenomenal customer service. So if a lead is sourced by me or Jamie or our website, and it goes to Adam, and 2 years later, they call Adam back and want to sell or upsize or whatever it may be, that's now Adam's lead. So he's getting a higher percentage, and he's being rewarded for providing this exceptional customer service that we want them to be.
Essentially, the expectation is, who do they call?
Yeah.
But oftentimes, just by the nature of the stuff we throw at them, they may call us through our channels, even though they had the greatest experience with the realtor on our team and want to reuse that person, but they just contacted through us. And in that case, we'll give it to the realtor. So yeah, that's where that. Our past clients, some of them are just so intermixed with different members on our team, with clients that do a number of transactions. So yeah, but good question on who sources it. And I think long-term for a team, regardless of how the client calls, if you have Joe working for this person, if they had a good experience with Joe and they want to work with Joe again, you probably wouldn't. I'd say long-term, you'd want to give Joe the split like it was a self-source lead, is my thought. That's encouraging good behavior. That's rewarding people for wanting to treat leads that aren't sourced by them like gold.
One more thing on this I just want to touch on and kind of share my mindset around is, whenever I'm always thinking, how is this going to benefit the business long term? And if I'm holding stuff back, if let's say this year, I'm probably going to do 20 to 25 transactions on my own, just because of who the clients are. Past client, really good past clients, friends from high school, whoever that may be. I'm trying to minimize that number as much as I can, to give out as much as we can, so that realtors make more money on our team, feel like they're a bigger part of our team, so that they stay with us longer, they treat clients better long term. And I know Jamie's mindset is the same. I'm totally okay sacrificing a paycheck this year, next year, the year after that, for the benefit of this machine that we're trying to build in 25 years from now.
Beautiful. Thanks, Denny. That was beautiful. James, John Cook's asking you, I know you have kids. What piece of advice can you give to me with 3 young kids to stay balanced and grow and manage your business? Thank you. P.S. Denny does great videos. He does.
Oh,
He does.
there's so much there. I guess I'll kind of focus on what I do. I mean, on like daily habits, routine, weekly stuff. You know, I'd say the balance does shift time, and I fortunately have enough seasons to recognize when, proactively recognize the balance. So I'm okay with the pendulum swinging, but I think consistently I try to prioritize sleep as step one. You know, if you're not getting what the sleep you need, then everything else falls apart. And for me, what's been really helpful is having just a good get up early, get to bed at a decent time, and have healthy habits. Like for me, that's a morning workout to start the day before I start looking at the emails. And but I also do hit the emails and work early just so that I get the hard things done first. So, you know, in my dream world, I'll be up by 6, I'll be done my workout by 7, I'll have 7 to 8 to catch up on some work, and 8 to 9 to spend with my kids before they go off to school. And it can flex a little bit there. But I guess I'm fortunate that the whole driver behind the team was to have more balance with family. And yes, there's been weeks this year where that hasn't been the case, but my life is far better than it was because of being able to leverage off people. And the biggest, I guess, help for that is the way our team is wired, where Denny's talking about giving opportunities to our team. So instead of, for these opportunities, my role, I might take on a dozen clients, stick on them myself this year, but I'll be the assistant to 20 others. And when you're the assistant, not the front runner, it takes a lot of pressure off, and it just opens up more time. So I think ultimately I couldn't balance with 3 kids if I took on more clients. So I had to set myself up to take on less clients. And that's really the ultimately only way to achieve that balance for me. And I don't have I'm not a set schedule guy. I don't take a specific day off. I definitely carve it out, and I definitely make time for fun. But life is too busy. 3 kids, 3 different drop-offs every morning, 3 different pickups every afternoon, sports. It's nuts.
And dogs.
Yeah, that too. Well, that's what the running is for. That gets me out on the trails.
I specifically love what you both have just said, because it's truly, you have both of you have a servant's heart, and it looks and sounds truly like you're reaping what you're rewarding to your team, in that your world is so much richer, bigger, and better as a result of sharing and giving away, as opposed to trying to hoard and keep and try and do more for yourself. It's you get this incredible gift, really, by sharing with your team.
You just wonder when it's all going to fall apart.
I think every leader thinks that. Yeah. I don't think it goes away. Keith Winterman's asked a couple questions. I'm not sure if this one got handled or not. Let me just ask it in case. How do you handle the lead follow-up to convert the cold leads you generate? Do you use a set number of calls, texts, emails, video messages in a set amount of time?
I'll share my 2 cents. It's been years since I really kind of hustled after leads, but I'll just go through some parameters that I used to do. When it came to straight cold calling, this doesn't quite answer your question here, but I would sit down and just dial 200 calls, and that would take, and regardless of the outcome, that was my routine. 200 phone calls back in the day, and from that 200 phone calls, I'd talk to 30 people and get 1 to 2 or 3 leads, and that was my go-to. Call it 3 days of the week, 4 days of the week, 3 days a week, 2 days of the week. Then I stopped. And then I one day, a year later, looked back at that sheet of leads, looked on Paragon, and saw that half of them sold with other agents because I didn't follow up. So that was my cold calling. But when I have an opportunity that kind of fades out, I always had like a 3 email rule sort of thing, and say that was a buyer. If it was a buyer that I just landed, I would say, okay, I'll set you up on a search. That would be number one. And then if whether they're looking at the search or not, if I'm hungry to try to get that buyer into something, I don't want to just email them, say, hey, how you doing? I do want to say, how are you doing? But I also want to say, hey, how you doing? This house looks kind of cool and just reduced it by 50 grand. And I'd share an opportunity. And if I did that 3 times with nothing in back, I'd move on. So it would be a 3 email rule. And at the 3rd one, you're on the autopilot of the search. And if you contact me, we'll get back on it. And down the road, they would sometimes, so, but I just had a rule of thumb of 3. And there was no real hack to whether it was a call, a text, an email, or video. I think it depends on the circumstance. And I think a text is probably the worst. If you're truly trying to land a lead that might be slipping, like a phone call is a great direct conversation, but oftentimes an email with an opportunity is the right touch for a buyer. A seller, it might be a recent sale in their neighborhood, but it's always a check-in followed by a piece of information that I think they might value.
Mm.
I'll maybe
Do you
give
take
the
that?
perspective
Go
of
ahead,
like
Denny.
of a team leader who is maybe delegating leads. That is more like an individual if you're working the leads that you're generating and following up. But from the team leader perspective, I just have spreadsheets on my computer, and anytime a lead comes in and it goes out to whoever on our team, their name and contact info is on this spreadsheet. And every, I'd say 3 or 4 weeks, I will follow up with each agent asking, when was the last time you talked to John? When was the last time you talked to whoever? I'm in a ridiculous amount of group chats. So I'm in most of those conversations with all these leads that have come in over the last 6 months. And so most of the time I'm just kept up to date through those group chats, and I'll just kind of step in wherever needed. But anyone that I haven't heard from or haven't been CC'd in an email to that goes out to our team, I'm just following up based on a very archaic system of having a few spreadsheets on my computer that are titled each person's name and leads.
Do you ever have to find yourself in a coaching conversation with someone that may not be following up or doing what they should be doing technically on a team?
Often.
Okay.
It's the burden of having a culture that the leads land on your lap in a
Yeah.
way. It does have a different mindset. It's a different, like when I was fortunate to have the hunger and desperation hunting for listings early in my career that if I had my first experience on our team, it wouldn't be the same appreciation for it. It just couldn't be.
Yeah. You just took the words right out of my mouth. I can only imagine both of you are sitting there going, man, if I was ever in these shoes, there's no chance anything would fall through my hands. It's just like you would take it on. But yeah, that's fair. You know what? It's true. It really is all about context. How did you come in? If you had to hunt for that business, you have a different perspective. But if it's there on a regular basis, then there's almost a sense that maybe it never goes away. Or I'll just take the ones I really like the most. Yeah.
I kind of have an interesting perspective because I was kind of in the middle ground of having both experiences. And so I was given early in my career, I was given opportunity by Jamie. And my motivation was I never want to have to cold call. So I better follow up with these easy ones that are given to me. And so like I think about that all the time is I don't want to have to go back to that. I don't want to have to go back to like being thirsty for another lead that if like Jamie mentioned something the other day where in the last whatever it was 10 years, I don't think there's been a point where we haven't had an active listing on market, unless it was like around Christmas time and we just took them all off to give a refresh. So I don't want to go back there. So following up with that, all of those contacts that come into us, like we spend, I would say it's one of the things that we don't necessarily do extremely well, but it is like super, super important. And that's something that I don't get upset or frustrated very often with realtors on our team, but that's definitely one area, if people haven't been followed up with correctly, that is very frustrating for me.
I can hear it in you too, that there's a real sense of, it's personal. Like you care about these leads, you care about their experience with your team and you. It's like it means something. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
You know, we could, there's a lot of room to grow within our team. Like if we had that more traditional sort of phone call, getting the boiler room together and really constantly follow up with the leads and nurture them, I mean, our numbers would be even higher. It's Denny doing this off the side of his desk, in addition to all the forward social marketing content we do. But crucially, that 3 to 4 week check-in that he does is important. You know, in the busy times at the start of this year, we get these little email pops up whenever a lead kind of submits a form and lands in our inbox. And I don't know, Denny, was there like a couple of weeks where it was like a couple a day, every day? Hey, we need a realtor. We're looking to buy. We're looking to sell.
Yeah.
And now it's died off, but you know, it's pretty significant. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
So what we do is we have the benefit of being in this position, but we're not doing it like there's a lot of room to improve. You know, don't ask us about follow-up with leads. Yes, we do it, but we're not the shining stars of lead follow-up, I would say.
Honestly, I think that's one of our biggest strengths is that Jamie and I both understand that we have so much room to improve. Like I get comments all the time from realtors saying, your videos are awesome. You do a ton on social media. It's so cool to watch and whatever. And in my head, I think, man, there's so much we can be doing so much better.
Yeah, we're both never satisfied.
It's just a constant struggle to grow. Yeah.
Well, that's part of the hunger, isn't it? It really is the drive. That's where you go from last year's production to saying, hey, look, there's an opportunity in this market. Let's take advantage of it if we can and go to 220. And I almost feel like what I'm hearing from both of you is it's truly an expression of who you are. It's an expression of perfection is perhaps not the right word, but excellence. It's an expression of your excellence. You guys strive to be excellent at what you're doing. And on that journey, excellence is always top grading, upgrading itself. There's always room for more, which makes it so rich.
Especially
I
just
think the team model is kind of like, for us, it's proven like we've kind of stumbled into where we are just through reassessing and engineering along the way, and also adapting to the people we have in a way. But I couldn't imagine being in this world where it's so hard to stand out. Like a team allows you to leverage off people to stand out a bit. Being known for, when I'm talking about preaching content that you want to be known for, if you want to be that luxury Maple Ridge agent or you know, selling ranches out in Southland, you know, South Surrey, or whatever it is that you want to niche yourself out to, I think you focus on that. But just being kind of a jack of all trades on your own, to me, that's only if you want to do a few deals a year. Like you're never going to break through it. You know, you can be flexible, but you also want to be known for something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, on that line, James, I noticed that every team member has an opportunity to shine as leaders in your own team. Like no one looks like there and here. Like this hierarchy doesn't really seem to visually exist.
And that's intentional, and we hope to improve it. And yeah, you know, get to the point where if you can search GD and our website pops up, then you don't need to have Garbut Duma spelled out all the way through, right? Our intent is to have the agent stand out. The intent is to build your own brand within an envelope of ours. And if we can't mutually add benefit to each other, then it won't work out. But that right now it feels right. You know, right now it's working. You know, so
it is.
Yeah. The decision to where you spend your energy for marketing, Instagram versus website versus, I don't know what other options people are considering, or if there are specific questions around that, because I think that's an important one. But where to spend your energy and how to do it, I mean, that's our approach has been do more than figure it out. If you want to feed up, if you have specific questions there, don't hesitate. Like we're all ears, because you don't need to be on all of it, but you need to focus. You need to be good at something if you want to be known for something.
Yeah, well said. You know, and this might be an awesome opportunity to thank you both. Yeah. I'll put it out one more time. If there are any questions in the room that are burning in you and you want to just get them out, now's your chance. Either unmute yourself, feel free to just go ahead and ask it, or type in a quick question. Otherwise, Ron, myself, Carla, on behalf of Keller Williams Elite Realty, you guys are freaking amazing. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. You already did a podcast, and here you are doing this. Beautiful. I'm very grateful. I'm humbled. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. I mean, it's an honor. And that podcast once every 3 weeks, 1 hour in the morning, and it just trickles out content. So it's been something that really makes sense for us, and something to consider for anyone in this room down the road. I wouldn't rush into that one, but it's definitely something that you can really scale and leverage off of.
Maybe we'll even have a session around those that do podcasts and are doing it on a high level. That would be a good conversation or topic for the future. Ron wants to know when you guys will be launching the TikTok campaign.
I think you have to do and focus on a certain number of things and things that fit into your personality and demographic. And TikTok is a little out of my comfort zone. I don't know, Ron, maybe in a year or two. We do have our videographer. I think she's 22, so she's a little younger. She is heavily into TikTok, and so she's definitely thrown some TikTok video ideas our way. But I don't see 13-year-olds purchasing real estate next year. So
You gotta plan ahead.
Hey, that's the future. That's investment.
I just want to know what the soundtrack's going to be in the background. Anyway.
My answer, I have two answers, Ron. I have when my 8-year-old and 7-year-old, if they choose TikTok, I'm going in hard. Whatever they choose is their platform. I'm going to go in hard and try to be an influencer in that platform so that they have their embarrassing dad all over their face. But outside of that, I don't think I personally have no intent to take on another platform until I learn to love Instagram again. I need a, I don't hate it. It's just, I'm not spending a lot of time and energy on Instagram. And when that comes around, when I'm there, maybe I'll look at other things, but I'm not even close. Social media is exhausting to me.
Fair enough. Denny, you know what? I'll just say this. We'll close it out here, Ron. And if you have any final words, feel free to throw them in there right after I'm done. Denny, the more I get to know you, the more I dig in on questions and I hear your answers, and I just hear the quality in your answers and the authenticity and who you are and the way you express yourself as a human being. I'm humbled to be in your presence. You are truly an amazing man. Thank you for being you. Thank you for those Instagram videos, and you're raw. I love them. They're authentic and they're beautiful. So keep it up. James, what do I need to do to be able to call you Jamie? I see Denny does. I've never heard that before, but I'm clearly on the outside. I want to get in.
I'll
Jamie,
change my name
note,
on here.
Oh yeah. I love you both. Thank you very much for your time today. Much appreciated.
appreciate that. Thank you, Josh.
Yep,
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.